Be starting here. We're talking about deeper faith, deeper faith. This is a topical Bible study, which means that I will be looking at a passage per week, at least one passage per week, that we will examine the scriptures, deeper faith, discovering who God is and who I am. We want to discover who God is and who I am. And I want to look at how deeper faith is discovered. We're going to talk about how deeper faith is discovered. This week, we're talking about how deeper faith is discovered in deficiency. On this September 11th, 2024, I can hardly believe that it was 23 years ago that we had the attack on America with the Twin Towers and in Schwenksville, Pennsylvania, and at the Pentagon. That's amazing. Can you believe that? That was 23 years ago today. And we will be looking at a particular passage of scripture that I'll tell you in a moment. And I just want to begin with a thesis. I like to focus what we're going to be studying. The thesis for tonight is that deeper faith is nurtured through unexpected encounters with God, during which he reveals mysteries about himself, the world around us, and ourselves that would otherwise remain unknown. When we go deeper in our faith, God has unexpected encounters with us. I hope that happens tonight. And in our unexpected encounters with God, he reveals mysteries about himself. And I think it's important that all of us, as followers of Christ, embrace the mystery of who God is, that he is not just instantly knowable. We can't understand him easily because he's God and he's infinite. And we want to understand the world around us. And of course, we want to understand ourselves in ways that we may have not known if it weren't for encountering God in the way that we should. And so I want to look at Matthew 17. This is what we're going to look at. We're going to look at Matthew 17, verses 14 through 21. We'll look at about 8 verses in Matthew 17, verses 14 through 21. I'm going to read it and give you a sense of what is going on in the text, and then we will get underway here. And it says in Matthew 17, verses 14 through 21, when they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. Lord, have mercy on my son, he said. He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. Jesus says, you unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, why couldn't we drive it out? He replied, that is Jesus, because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. What a word. Nothing will be impossible for you. I feel like I want to read it again. Because you have so little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. And so I want to give you some meditational insights into this passage, which is what our format will be. I'm going to give you some meditational insights. And along the way, as I give you some meditative insights, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you some questions from Matthew 17, 14 through 21. And so, first of all, I want you to understand what deficiency is. What do we mean by that? That deeper faith is discovered in our deficiency. Deficiency means that which is lacking, failing, or falling short of what is needed or expected. Deficiency is that which is lacking, failing, or falling short of what is needed or expected. Some of us here tonight We have had issues with ourselves and had issues with self-esteem, how we esteem ourselves and maybe not think that much of us. Some of us have had issues with self-worth, that we have a lower sense of our worth than what God says about us. I guarantee you that your sense of self-worth or lack thereof, and I guarantee you that your sense of a lack of self-esteem stems from your deficiencies. You have maybe misinterpreted or exaggerated your deficiencies. You have looked at your deficiencies through the prism of your own perspective, but you have not examined your deficiencies through the prism of God's word or with the help of the Holy Spirit. And so, for sure, I'm not softening that you and I have deficiencies and shortcomings. The deficiency is that which is lacking. We all got things we lack. That which is failing and that which is falling short or shortcomings of what is needed or expected. Okay. Now, what I meant by we sometimes either misinterpret our deficiencies or we exaggerate our deficiencies because we don't look at our deficiencies through the prism of God's word or with the aid and help of the Holy Spirit. But there's a biblical rationale for deficiency that I preached a few weeks ago. And it's from 1 Corinthians 1, 26 through 31. It says in that passage, brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential, famous. Not many were of noble birth, that is, you're born into a rich family. But God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. And God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things like Haitians that eat dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio. The despised things. It takes a despising to make up such a story, not only a mania and mental illness, but it takes and xenophobia and all kinds of racial hatred, as we heard in the debate last night, some of us. But the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. It is because of him that you and I are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us wisdom from God. Hallelujah. That if I lack wisdom, I got wisdom in Jesus. Somebody say amen. I got wisdom in Jesus if I lack wisdom. That is our righteousness. If I got a character problem, my righteousness is in Christ. If I fall short, my holiness and my redemption is in Christ. Therefore, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. And so it would appear that in God's providence, in God's economy, and how he deals with the human race, that God not only anticipates, but he allows deficiency in us. That one of the reasons why God chose you for salvation is because of your deficiency. If you had no deficiencies, you have no need of Christ. You'd have no need of salvation. You've had no need of the work of redemption in you, where God is making you better each day, where he's conforming you to the image of Christ. And so deficiency is lacking and failing and falling short of what is needed or expected. That is exactly what God is up to in our lives. And so here's some motivational insights. There's about 6 of them I got, not a lot. First thing, deficiency often surfaces after mountaintop experiences. Deficiency, our sense of deficiency or lack or falling short or failing, tends to happen inordinately in frequency following a mountaintop experience. A mountaintop experience. I'll say more about that in a moment. But I got a question for you. Here's a question. Our first question. What is a mountaintop experience in Christian jargon? What is that? Raise your hand if you know how to do that. Raise your hand. You see react at the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to raise your hand. Anybody want to tell me, what does that mean, a mountaintop experience in Christian jargon? What do we mean by that? What do we mean by a mountaintop experience? Surely someone knows a mountaintop. Somebody has had a mountaintop experience. What are we talking about when we talk about that? Okay. All right. Yes. Careview community. Who's that?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So a mountaintop experience is like where everything is going good or you've met with God. It's a really high point,
Yeah.
really kind of like a landmark point
Yeah.
in your life, pretty
Yes.
significant. And yeah, that's what I think of mountaintop experiences.
Excellent. I couldn't have said it any better. That sounds like Christiana. Yes. Yes. That is exactly what it is. A landmark moment, a height, an important time where things are going our way. Yeah, that's what a mountaintop experience is. So going back to that point, let's go one slide back. That deficiency often surfaces after mountaintop experiences. That's almost sounds like a little bit of a paradox or contradiction. Why would my deficiency come forth when I've had a mountaintop experience? That's very interesting. We're going to look at that in a minute. Okay. And so, to give you some context of this question, in Matthew 17, the first 9 verses before we came in, it says Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, sometimes called the inner circle of the disciples. There were 12 disciples, but there were 3 that Jesus particularly poured into that he appointed as leaders amongst that 12. All 12 were leaders, but the 3 that he chose was Peter, James, and John, based on their gifting and their proximity to Jesus. And he led them up a high mountain by themselves, a high mountain in Palestine. There he was transfigured before them. It's amazing. Jesus took on a supernatural form. He took on a form beyond his corporeal normal form. Corporeal is a fancy word for body. Okay, and so he went. His body became changed and glorified in some way, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then, Moses and Elijah appeared before them. Lord have mercy. From thousands of years ago, as it relates to Moses, and hundreds of years as it relates to Elijah, talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will build up 3 shelters or booths, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He didn't. Mark says Peter, not knowing what to say, spoke. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud covered them, overshadowed the whole scene. Jesus, Moses, Elijah, Peter, James, and John. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground. You got to be really scared to fall face down into the ground. Terrified, the Bible says. But Jesus came and touched them and said, Get up. He says, Don't be afraid. When they looked up, they saw no one but Jesus. And as they came down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, Don't tell anyone what you have seen today until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. So he's kind of prophesying his death. Yes, very good, very good. Lynn Johnson says mountaintop experience is when you feel especially close to God and when you truly experience the sovereignty, presence, and power of God. I'll buy that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Very good. That's good. So that is the backdrop of what is happening, that constitutes a mountaintop experience. I would dare say that none of us has had a mountaintop experience. Sometimes in ministry, if God uses you greatly, no one said that, but sometimes God uses you phenomenally and supernaturally, and you know that you are really functioning at a high level, whatever your gift is, whatever your talent is, and you know God is using you greatly, and that's a mountaintop experience when God exposes you to something or shows you something, reveals himself. You become aware of his presence. That's a mountaintop experience. So, having known what a mountaintop experience is and having seen what happened earlier in the text before the text that we're looking at tonight, how let's go to this question. How might a mountaintop experience either blind us or make us aware of our deficiencies? I went two directions in that question. How might a mountaintop experience, the best time of life, either blind me to my deficiencies or make me more aware of my deficiencies? I'd like to hear from you on that. How does a mountaintop experience either blind you or make you aware of your deficiency? Anyone? Anyone? You can raise your hand and I'll call on you. Okay. How might a mountaintop experience either blind us or make us aware of our deficiencies? Anyone? Okay. Thank you, Pastor Chris. We'll hear from Pastor Chris. I'd love to hear from Pastor Chris.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. Let me come out my video. I'm sorry,
That's all right.
guys. I think that it's interesting that when we think about deficiency, it means we're thinking about ourselves and our performance. And I think in terms of how it can blind us is that we can think that all my hard work and all my study and say if God's using me mightily, it's because I was on my face before the Lord and I labored with Jesus, and then God used me mightily. So I can think that my mountaintop experience or my quote unquote success has to do with how hard I work
Right.
or the activities that I did, and I can be blind to as you read the scripture earlier, that God's not calling the noble or the mighty.
Right. Yes.
He's not. I love how you sometimes say that God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called.
Yes.
And I think that we can get it so twisted, and the world really reinforces that. You work hard, and then they applaud you.
Yes.
So, and then how the deficiencies can make you more aware. I mean, how this mountaintop can make you more aware of your deficiencies. I know that I've had experiences where I know I didn't prepare in the way that God glorified Himself,
Mm-hmm.
through me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like as Isaiah said, woe is me, I'm undone. That
Mm-hmm.
God would so powerfully choose to move for me in a way that I just feel, absolutely at my worst, my weakest, and just that I did not, quote unquote, give it my best. And it just makes me more aware of how dependent I am to do the supernatural only through Him. That it is just no way that I can do it. I mean, there have been times where I've had a speaking engagement and I've literally had no voice all week before the engagement and been sick, and God, absolutely did His most powerful work through absolutely me having nothing to do with it. And so it makes me more aware that apart from Him, I simply can do nothing.
Very good. Well said. That's a very, very good answer. That it's interesting how you pivoted very, very well. That the mountaintop experience can blind me because I'm thinking that it's because I tarried before the Lord and was godly. But then it also can make me aware because Pastor Chris said that she's been used of God in ways that she knew it wasn't her. It had to be the Lord that made that possible. Okay, Tim Maddox. Tim Maddox.
Um, a mountaintop experience, it can be blinding because it's like it takes you outside of the situation. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a high, if you will.
Right.
So that
Yeah, that's good.
that would be like a blind part.
Right.
And then from you seeing the deficiencies from you being blind,
Yeah.
uh, it's like I think deficiencies they'll come from like your past.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you think of your past, you're like, I know I ain't supposed to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you aware of that. Whereas like the deficiency that makes you aware from
Right.
your past. And
Yes.
also the blind spot will take you to the point where you're elevated and you can't see it. So
Right.
I don't know if I made any sense when I was just saying that.
I think you did. I think you did. I really liked, Tim, how you said that it's a high. You know, I don't know if you meant it this way, but it can not only be a high point, it can actually be a high, like adrenaline can be flowing in you in a way that is blinding. It can also be deeply disappointing when you come down from the mountaintop back to the same conditions that you found before you went up there. That what happened to me and how God dealt with me in isolated fashion in revealing himself on another level may not be sustainable into the rest of my life. And in fact, let me just make that as a statement that when God deals with you in great and dramatic ways, even miraculous ways, don't expect for that to be sustainable in your deeper faith into the rest of your life. There's going to be a breakdown. There's going to be a crashing back to earth like any high. And I don't mean to be sacrilegious in saying that spending time in the presence of the Lord is similar to a narcotic high, but it kind of has a similarity in the sense that just like a high artificially narcotically cannot be sustainable, can't walk around high all the time. But yes, and it's like dopamine, yes, that I can't stay elevated like that. And I'm not sure God wants us to stay elevated like that. That is a particular time that he wanted to show Peter, James, and John that for what he had in store for them, they needed to see Jesus glorified because the most traumatic thing that had ever happened in their lives is about to happen within days. So Jesus wanted them to bolster their faith, to see him in glorified fashion before they would see him on the cross. And so, mountaintop experiences are times that are going to surface our deficiency. For one thing, fear. They were afraid. They were very afraid. They were terrified at what they saw. Here's a second thing: deficiency emerges from disorientation brought on by situational challenges. Deficiency emerges from disorientation. I'm disoriented. I don't understand some things. I may even be discouraged. I think a lot of discouragement begins with disorientation, that God behaves in ways that we don't expect him to behave, or things go in a way that take us by surprise because we feel like God is pleased with us, and therefore we're insulated from suffering or difficulty or challenges. But deficiencies in us emerge from disorientation, that we don't understand what is going on in the circumstances and situations that we find ourselves. There are things that happen that take us by surprise. Or how about this? There are things that go wrong in life and you're surprised by your reaction. I wonder if this has ever happened to you. That something happens in your life that was unexpected and your emotional response is totally different from what you thought it would be. It could be that you are at a funeral or a homegoing of someone that you didn't think was that emotionally significant in your life, and yet you find yourself weeping. That's kind of odd. That happens sometimes. Or someone says one little thing to you, and you become very angry at what they said. And when you play back the tape, it doesn't seem like it was that big a deal, but your response was outsized. A deficiency came out because something presented in a situation that you did not expect. So here's a thought, a reflection question. What is your default reaction when you discover that you are in over your head? When there's something that happens that you know you can't handle and it's beyond your pay grade or it's beyond your capability and you can't fix it, what's your default reaction? I wonder if anybody brave enough to share with us. What is your reaction when you can't uh, uh, when you can't handle what's going on. Okay. I see Monique said I become sleepy. Okay, yeah. Sleep can be a response to being overwhelmed or depressed. Yeah, yeah. I shut down. Okay, I shut down. I want to hear more about that. You can't say something that profound, Michelle. You got to tell me more about shut down. What that mean? What that mean? You shut down? Okay, I'm trying to find you.
Okay, I'm
There we
unmuted
go.
now.
Very
Okay.
good.
So for me, what I mean, because it happened to me recently, when I shut down, because for a very long time, and when I was growing up, my my voice wasn't heard. People didn't hear me.
Uh,
So when it happened to me just recently, at work, I was like, you know what? Okay, whatever, forget it, and I just shut down, and I become almost like robotic, if that makes sense. I just go
mm-hmm.
in and I just
Yes.
make the donuts. I just make the donuts and I do my job, and I'm like, see you later, bye.
Right.
Because you don't have anything to say to me, because you you dismiss me. That's what I'm looking for. You dismiss me. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
okay.
Good. Good. Do you consider your shutting down a deficiency, or is it just a personality trait that is neutral?
Uh Good question. Hmm. I'm gonna lean on the side that it's probably just neutral.
You think it's neutral? So you think it's okay to say, okay, that's fine. All right. You think that is that what you really feel?
Uh, Recently I did.
What was it really fine that people that you didn't feel heard? Was that
No,
is that fine?
no, that's not fine. That I'm
Okay,
not.
so why did you say it was fine? Well, that's fine. Okay. And then you go robotic and just kind of do what you do, make the donuts as you said. You're very articulate. But it sounds like you are emotionally detached from the situation where
Yeah,
you felt was overwhelming or where you didn't feel that you were heard.
yeah.
Is that a deficiency or neutral? I'm
Uh,
giving you a second chance to answer.
I It's a deficiency. It's definitely a deficiency, I
How
think.
and what do you think the deficiency is?
Um,
I don't have an answer, by the way. I'm not leading you. I'm not leading the
no,
witness.
I hear you. I hear you. What's the deficiency? Um, hmm.
By the way, a deficiency is not a pejorative term. That's not negative. Just because you lack something does not mean you lack worth,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
just because you don't have what it takes in this particular situation. If there was a cardiothoracic surgery that was needed, I don't think you'd feel bad that you can't do the surgery. So
absolutely.
there's nothing wrong with lack sometimes, but it just means that I'm not enough to function optimally in this situation. That's
Yeah.
basically it. So do you have any thoughts about that? If you don't, it's fine. You have clarified your position.
Uh, hmm.
You want to
I'm
say
just
anything about your deficiency or what is going on for you when you don't feel heard?
What's going on with me is um sometimes when a lot of times see things and people don't pay attention because I don't know what they're thinking. I do ask these questions, but I don't know what they're thinking
Okay.
when I see these things,
Right.
and
Right.
they just blow me off. You
Ah,
know.
okay. All right.
So,
Very good. Very good. You did a good job. Very good. I'm satisfied with your answer. You clarified what your position was. Very good. All right. Let me go to either Charles or Eloise. We'll see which one we get. You're unmuted.
You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
First of all, I would stop, I would think, and I would search within for an answer.
I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you right now. I don't know what
Can you
that
hear
is.
me now?
I hear you better right then. Yes.
Okay. I would search within me for an answer. I would breathe. I would try to pull the best that I can from my resources, knowing that I'm at a stop. I would call on the Lord. I would pray and ask for an answer, and then I would wait.
Very good. That's a good drill. That is a good default position when you are discovering that you're in over your head. Very good. I'm satisfied with that. Excellent. How about you, Lanice?
Sorry. I've had this to happen to me a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, it, what's critical is for me to come to the awareness that I am in over my head.
Yes.
There has been a history of delusion, whereas I will tell myself, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. And then when the rubber meets the road, I realize I don't have this. It is more than I can handle. And so um, I take a moment, I take a step, and then I go into problem resolution mode, which is I ask for the help that I should have asked for in the beginning
Okay.
and take ownership for what like, I'm sorry, I thought I had this, I thought I could do it, and I couldn't. And I really need your help to bring this across the finish line.
So what is it? What is going off in you that makes you say, "I got it and I can fix it"? What is that? What is that mechanism that makes you respond that way?
Probably pride.
Pride, huh? What do you mean? Say more.
I mean, it's the pride that that has gotten me to that point in the past. Like, I've got this skill, I can do this, I can do the other, and
Okay.
I keep going
Okay.
until it's like I took on more than I could handle. I should have delegated more of this.
Okay. Good. Good. Very good. All righty. All righty. I'll take that. Very good insights. Very, very good insights. I like what I've heard. I also like, it's interesting in the chat that some of you have talked about sequestering yourself, of isolating or withdrawing or spending time in a kind of processing, very quiet and withdrawn. And Karen says, well, at this point, it's God's business because it is too huge for me and be still. That's good. So it seems that Karen has pivoted to a more serene response to maybe where she would have been more interventional. That's very good. That comes with wisdom. Great answers. Very great. This is one of the things. There ain't no wrong answer, by the way. But all of these answers are very, very insightful. I want to look at the text here in beginning in verse 11 of chapter 17 of Matthew. Or no, I'm sorry, 14. And it says, when they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. Lord, have mercy on my son. And he gives the story of how he's had seizures and is suffering greatly. This sounds like it may have even been something neurological going on. He often falls into the fire. It could even be translated that he throws himself into the fire, or he falls in the water, and no doubt his father has to retrieve him. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. So this was a situation that was clearly over the head of the disciples that they could not handle. Clearly, clearly. So we have said so far that the deficiency is a lacking, it's a failing, it's a falling short of what is needed or expected. By the way, when you have a failing or something that falls short, it doesn't make you a failure. It just means you don't have the resources at this time to deal with what is in front of you. Deficiency often surfaces after mountaintop experiences that I can't make it through life based on my hallelujahs. and based on the good time I had in church. Your good time in church and that you praise the Lord may not carry you through every situation, because the glory of the Lord is not sustainable. The glory of the Lord does not remain with us. His Shekinah dissipates because we're not in heaven, we on earth. I hope you understand that, what I'm trying to say here, that the good time, yeah, that's why, some folk have used church as an escape, that we worship. I think sometimes, how can I put it? Sometime I wonder if black folk in what we call the black church are almost too celebrative. That we are so good at celebration. Can't nobody out celebrate black folk. Black church folk, black party folk, black music festival folk, black entertainers. Nobody can out celebrate black folk, but celebration is not enough, because sometimes it gets in the way of uh, of uh, dealing with my deficiency, which is very important, which we'll see in the text. Very important. If I'm going to have a deeper faith, if I'm going to know God deeper, the premise of tonight's message or tonight's Bible class is that I've got to discover it in deficiency. Otherwise, my whole perspective is going to be distorted, and I'm going to be very discouraged in the future. So services after mountaintop experiences and emerges from the disorientation brought on by situational challenges. But here's another one. Deficiency is compounded by pride. Deficiency gets worse and is compounded by pride. All right? How might the collective pride of the disciples be discerned from this passage? If you're looking at Matthew 17, 14 through 21, which is a very small pericope, pericope is a slice, a cutting away of that passage from the whole of chapter 17. We're really just looking at those 8 verses, 14 through 21. How might the collective pride of the disciples be discerned in this passage? Oh, I would love somebody to help me with that one. Where could we detect any pride? How might there have been a pride problem somewhere with regards to the disciples? Anybody? Mm-hmm. I can tell during some of this Bible class, you're going to make me wait on you. I'm patient. I'll wait on you as you think about it, as you process it, as you pray, as you look at the text. I don't have any problem with you taking time to look at that text in Matthew 17, 14 through 21. Could there be pride detected and discerned in this passage at the point of their deficiency? They clearly had deficiency because they couldn't help this young boy and this father. They couldn't cast the demon out. They couldn't heal him. And remember, Jesus had commissioned them and given them power. He had given them a kind of temporary enablement. I would love for Jasmine Austin to enlarge on what you said. Jasmine. Yes.
I was just reading it through. I think pride shows up because the disciples obviously would have realized that they weren't able to help this man and his son.
Yeah, they smacking him in the head over and over again with oil. His head getting red. They smacking him. When you get smacked in the head 12 times, your head get red, and nothing was working. And so go on.
So evidently, it seems like they just gave up because the man has to go to Jesus himself. You know what I mean? Like, I think in that moment, maybe the pride was that the disciples would have seek Jesus as well, to aid them in helping this man, whereas maybe they had too much pride and just didn't go further in trying to get the man, you know what I mean, trying to free the demon out of this man's son. That's the only way. That's where I think the pride would have showed up. Like if they were too prideful to admit that they weren't able to complete, or not complete, but to help this man. Does that
That's
make sense?
exactly it. That's
Okay.
exactly it. Yes, yes. That it short circuited their faith too. That the man, the poor man, his son been smacked upside his head all morning, and they watching him trying to pray and trying to deliver the dope boy, and it's of no avail. And so, not even one of the 12 disciples. I mean, wouldn't it have occurred to any of them? You know, let's get Jesus. Let's see what Jesus got to say about this. They don't even pray. They don't even seek out Jesus. Who gave you the power? Well, Jesus gave us the power. Well, how come you wouldn't consult with the person that gave you the capacity to even do this and find out what's going on? We don't find out till after the story. Then they finally help them in private. They don't want anybody to see their deficiency. They're hiding their deficiency. That is a danger on your job when you hide your deficiency. It's a danger in marriage to hide your deficiency. It's a danger in relationships to hide your deficiency because you make relationships and your job and your life about your own performance. You can't afford to say, Lenice, you know, I don't know if it's true, but Lenice said, I think it's pride that makes me go head first into a problem. And I say, I got it. She even said she was delusional. I was about to like push back on her. Well, I don't know if it's delusional. Maybe it's not delusional. But I said, you know, let me just let her talk because she know herself better. It may have been that I fool myself into thinking I can handle something that is way over my head. And that's a kind of default that we have. I have a default. I don't have a sense of my limitations. It's one of my weaknesses as a person. It is one of my weaknesses as a pastor. I had to do this case study on CareView last week. And I determined that those are one of my three weaknesses. I had three weaknesses. And that was one of them, that I don't have a sense of my limitations. Sometimes I can't help people. You know, sometimes as a pastor, I can't help some people. And I know that I've known that for years that I can't help everybody. I know that. I know I don't have the juice, the magic elixir to help everybody. I'm not expert and suitable for everybody's problems at every time. Or I may be wonderful in this situation, but I'm not quite as wonderful in this situation. I've had to learn that being effective as a follower of Christ is not to be perfect, but to be good enough. To just be good enough. Sometimes being good enough is exactly what God is asking of you, not to be perfect. Just be good enough. Just be good enough. And so I identify with heading into I can handle it, I can do it, not asking for help and all that kind of thing. But in this case, they're not asking for help, hurt this care seeker, hurt this man, and hurt this son. That son had to suffer because of their pride. Had they gone to Jesus, this would have happened long before. The inference of the passage is that I took him to your disciples, and he ain't say disciple. He said, I took him to your disciples, and I've been with them a long time because they could not heal him. The way they discovered that they could not heal him is that all of them took a shot. And all of them taking a shot, laying hands on him, right? Couldn't heal this boy. And it was discouraging. They put that poor family through a lot of difficulty, all because they wouldn't call on Jesus. All because they wouldn't call on Jesus. So there's pride in that. There's a pride in that. Okay? Here's another thing. Deficiency is exposed in the presence of God. It's exposed in or by the presence of God. The presence of God exposes deficiency. Isaiah 6:5. Look at Isaiah 6:5 right here on the screen. Isaiah 6:5. Woe to me, I cried, Isaiah said. I am ruined. Do you get those two statements? Woe to me. And then he says, I am ruined. Literally in the Hebrew, the idea is that I am destroyed. I am unraveled. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the king. What is particularly relevant about that is that it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. Now we believe, according to genealogy, that Isaiah was related to King Uzziah. He not only admired him, Uzziah was a great king. He was a godly king. He was a great king, but he died. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the king. I have seen the king. I have seen the Lord Almighty. I've seen El Shaddai. I've seen him. In the presence of the Lord, he says, woe is me. In the presence of the Lord, he says, I'm nothing. I'm destroyed. I'm disintegrated. That's what he's saying. Okay? So my deficiency comes out in the presence of the Lord. That's why some people don't like the presence of the Lord. They don't like being in God's presence. They don't like laying themselves bare. Some people don't like corporate prayer that much, believe it or not. Some church folk avoid prayer like the plague because you don't know what's going to happen in prayer. You know, worship can become somewhat predictable. And we kind of know what's going to come next. You don't know what's going to happen in prayer. If we're really yielded to the Lord and if the Holy Spirit is having his way, we don't know what the Holy Spirit is going to do. All kinds of surprises. Some people have the prize control. And then prayer is antithetical to control. Prayer opposes the delusion that I'm in control. Any delusions of grandeur, that I can handle it, or that I'm in control, the presence of God disintegrates that. All right? And so I'm ruined. So look at this. Look at the next thing. Look at this next thing. Jesus says, you unbelieving and perverse generation. How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Jesus rebuked the demon quickly with the quickness, and it came out of the boy immediately, and he was healed at that moment. Now, he had been smacked upside the head all morning by 12 proud men, and then the Savior gets a hold of him, and in the matter of seconds, he's delivered. They didn't access whatever was in them was not equal to what was needed for this family. I assure you that in ministry, I'm never equal to what is coming before me. I have to constantly check back in with the Lord. I can't just say, I got this. I dare not go preach a sermon or go into a room to counsel or to minister to someone or shepherd someone without God's help. That doesn't make me perfect, but I need the Lord's help. He calls them unbelieving and perverse. Wow. You're perverted. Your view of me, your view of yourself, your view of the powers I gave you is perverted. Your whole generation is perverted. Wow. He not only indicts the disciples, he says, you and the donkey you rode in on, you and your whole culture is perverted. You and all of the churches in the you're all perverted. How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. He rebukes the demon. Just like that, it's over. Comes out of the boy. The boy is healed on the spot. Okay? Here's a question. We're almost done. Here's a question. What are the factors that made Jesus appear to be so hard in his assessment of his disciples in this situation? Seems like Jesus is awfully hard. I've read this passage many times. And I remember the first time that I read this passage. Maybe I was a teenager, because I got very interested in the scriptures in my teenage years. 16, 17, 14, 15, somewhere in there. And I said, man, why was he so hard on them? He is the Lord after all. I'm sure they did their best. Why are you so hard on him, Jesus? What do you think the factors could have been that made Jesus appear to be so hard in his assessment of his disciples in this situation? By the way, I don't want to be misleading. Jesus was hard on the disciples. I'm being diplomatic. But Jesus was hard on the disciples. That's a hard word. When you call somebody having little faith and saying, you say they're your disciples, right? A disciple is one who attaches to another. They followed him for 3 years. And he calls them unbelieving. You're unbelieving. You're unbelieving. Wow, that seems harsh. And you're perverse. Wow, that seems harsh to call the disciples perverse. Okay, let's hear from you, Tim. What is your response to that?
Well, I believe it's everything you said. He's been with him for 3 years.
Yeah.
They've seen him do different things. And not to mention, he most unlikely told them they have experienced this whole situation before, is what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. And
Right.
so that's why he said, you know what? We just went through this. And y'all still don't get it. That's why he said you're wicked. Because
Okay.
you are in your own self. So that makes,
Good.
makes
So there's an urgency. You're right. He's not going to be there that long. In some days ahead, because this is further in to Matthew. Not that long from now, he's going to be crucified. Jesus knows this, and that's why there was a transfiguration. And then this is the other thing: they had just been in glory. They had just seen him transfigured. They had just conversed with Moses, the greatest leader in Israel history. Elijah, the greatest prophet in terms of the miracles. Nobody's in the whole Bible has ever done as many miracles in the Bible other than Jesus than Elijah. Elijah does more miracles than anybody else in the scriptures this side of Jesus. So, okay, he wouldn't be there much longer. That's right, Deacon Rusty. Jesus seemed kind of rude off the rip, but he knew the cross was coming, so they have to get right. Yeah, y'all got to get right. I agree. Y'all got to get it together. They were acting like they hadn't been with Jesus, but like the rest of the spiritual culture. Wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's discerning, Pastor Stacy, that they were acting like they were indiscernible from people that had never met Jesus. That's why it's really not even personal when you look at it. He says, you unbelieving and perverse generation. He ain't even talking only to the disciples, because he's recognizing in the disciples the influence of the spiritual culture of Israel that was carnal, that was ungodly, that was religious. They did all of the right religious moves praying for that boy, but they didn't have any spiritual integrity. And they didn't even have enough sense to go get Jesus. That the man whose son is suffering had to do it. Okay? It's like, you don't believe yet? I agree with you. Yeah, you don't believe yet. Possibly the disciples have been with Jesus, and yet they were anxious to approach him. Uh, uh, maybe they were too anxious to approach him. That could have been it. Yeah, they could be. They could, at times the disciples do seem afraid of Jesus. They do seem afraid of him. Um, Anybody else want to add to that of why Jesus seems hard on them? I know that's a subjective way of saying it, that he's hard on them. Some may think he wasn't that hard on them. Considering this, anybody else want to weigh in on that? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Let's look at this next idea. Deficiency is best confronted in the context of failure. Deficiency, that which I lack, my shortcomings, is best confronted in the context of failure. Your greatest learning curve happens in failure, not success. There's not much to be learned from success. Have you ever observed that? If anything, success can distort things and make things unclear. Success is not a teacher. Success is not a teacher. Failure, on the other hand, is a Rhodes Scholar from Oxford. Yeah, failure. You've never gotten smart from succeeding and praise and affirmation. Boy, you sure? You don't want counsel from somebody that's only succeeded, do you? That's why in sports, you ever notice this? You ever notice? As a rule, there are exceptions. As a rule, the greatest players make lousy coaches. The greatest players make lousy coaches. Michael Jordan didn't even think about coaching. He didn't. He wants to own a team, but he didn't even think of it. He just sold his team and made like something like $3 billion. But he don't mind owning the team, but he knew he couldn't coach. He's too great. He's too good. I remember Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson is the best leader on a basketball floor I've ever seen. Magic Johnson is amazing. He's my favorite player, Magic Johnson. Even though I'm a Sixers fan, I loved Magic Johnson. I loved him. But you know what? He was a terrible coach. I think he coached the Lakers for 2 weeks, and he almost went into an insane asylum. He almost lost his mind because he can't understand why can't everybody be as dedicated and as disciplined and make smart decisions on the basketball court like me? It's not that deep. How come you just can't make a great pass? You can't shoot. Just pass the ball. How come you just can't blocks out and rebound? It's great athletes don't make good coaches as a rule. As a rule, okay, basketball players can make good coaches, maybe even good players sometimes. Larry Brown was a good basketball player back in the 70s, but and he's a great coach. Lenny Wilkins, some of my sports fans might remember Lenny Wilkins. He was a very good coach because he was a good but not great basketball player. So same thing in football. Most of the guys that are great, phenomenal, the very best quarterbacks and best wide receivers and running, they don't make great coaches because they don't understand. They've only had success. Success can't teach. Failure, on the other hand, wow, is a phenomenal teacher. And so, if you notice, it says the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" After that whole morning, why couldn't we drive it out? So, deficiency is best confronted in the context of failure. You have to be able to look at what went wrong and look at your deficiencies. And there's no shame in doing a self analysis of what went wrong. We all learn from our failures. Don't be afraid of failure. Somebody said that success is just failure turned inside out. Success is simply failure turned inside out. Success typically does not happen without failure. You got to fail to build to the point of success. And so deficiency is confronted in the context of failure. Why couldn't we drive it out? I assure you, they'd have never asked Jesus about how to cast a demon out or how to show up in spiritual integrity had they not failed. There's no way they'd approach Jesus about it. It wouldn't have even occurred to them. And things were going merrily along before now. This is the first time they had dissatisfied customers. For a couple of years now, they've been laying hands on people and of no consequence. Everybody else seems satisfied. Now, closer to the crucifixion, to the end of Jesus' earthly life, now they're tripping up. What is that? Failure. Failure introduced to themselves and their deficiency. Here's a maybe last thing. Deficiency is remedied by a deeper faith, or deeper faith may be discovered in confronting our deficiency. Either way, deficiency is remedied by a deeper faith. When I go deeper in my faith, my deficiencies start to constrict and contract. I don't have as many deficiencies as I go deeper in my faith. But then deeper faith may be discovered in confronting my deficiency when I'm not afraid of it, when I don't have to be perfect. It's very liberating to say I'm not perfect. You see? And so I need to perfect being a good enough pastor and not being a great pastor or a perfect pastor. Sometimes I've noticed, me included, that some people have expected me to be perfect as a pastor, and they can't deal with me not being perfect. When I have been good enough, but good enough is not good enough for some people. And I have to be of some blame of that because of maybe my desire or my attempt to be perfect or to be proficient at everything. Now, maybe God don't want me to be proficient at everything. Maybe God don't want me to be expert at every aspect of ministry. In fact, I know that's the case. So deficiency is remedied by a deeper faith. Or deeper faith may be discovered in confronting our deficiency. Look at this text here. This is the last text, 20 and 21. He replied, Jesus, when they said, why couldn't we drive it out? Because you have so little faith. Because you have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Let's break it down just a little bit here. Why couldn't we drive it out? Because you have so little faith. You could just stop there. Because you have little faith. Then, in a kind of paradox and a kind of seeming contradiction, Jesus says, truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed. By the way, the mustard seed is one of the smallest seeds in all of botany and in trees. It's a very, very tiny seed. He tells them, you have too little faith. And then he says, if you just have faith the size of a mustard seed, you'd have been able to do that and much more. Doesn't take a lot of faith. Just takes the faith the size of the grain of a mustard seed. That's all. Your faith is so infinitesimal, so tiny, that it's a fraction and does not even compare to the size of a mustard seed. By the way, mustard seeds are one of the smallest seeds in the seed world, but they produce one of the biggest trees. Jesus is using a brilliant illustration that tiny seeds can bring big results. Could be that I don't need more faith, I need deeper faith. God is not trying to give you more faith. He's trying to give you deeper faith. God is not trying to make you perfect. God is trying to make you good enough. Because he's perfect. He got perfect covered. He just needs you to show up and be faithful. You have so little faith. But if you had faith the size of the grain of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it'll move. And so what is the standard that Jesus is offering to them? Nothing will be impossible for you. Nothing will be impossible for you. I want your faith to be as such, size of the grain of a mustard seed, so that nothing will be impossible for you. All right? And when you fail and fall short, I want you to come to me, as they should have. All right? Now here's a question. When we talk about him saying, you can say to a mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Here's my last question. Is Jesus being literal or figurative about faith in this passage? Is he being literal? Can I really say to a mountain, move from here to there? Or is he being figurative to make a point? Which is it? Is Jesus being literal or figurative when he's talking about deeper faith? Okay, we'll go with Kiara.
I think Jesus is being figurative to use a huge thing because that's how we look at things in our lives that need to be moved. So I think he was being figurative to take something that is huge to people in a like a physical view of something and make it the object lesson for what he was trying to teach.
Yeah, but he follows it up with nothing will be impossible to you. Is that figurative too?
No, that's literal. I think
so
that
if nothing will be impossible, nothing is impossible. Why would you say that moving a mountain is figurative?
I don't think that people would normally just say for a mountain to move. Why would a mountain be in your way, like in a literal sense? I think that we look at things and make them into mountains, our real everyday lives in situations.
That's well put, but why would nothing be impossible either? People don't go around saying nothing's impossible either. Both of the statements are pretty exponential. You can say to a mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. And so if I believe this, if that's figurative, why would I say that nothing will be impossible for you is figurative? Because if I say nothing will be impossible for you, because you said that's actually literal though. So if that's literal, would you agree that moving a mountain from here to there is lesser than nothing being impossible to you. Do you agree with that? What is the
I don't
bigger
think it's.
what is the
I
bigger
don't,
feat? What is the bigger feat? Moving a mountain from here to there or nothing being impossible for you? What's the bigger? What's the bigger phrase?
I think they're just as. I think they're. It's neither is bigger. I think they're just
No?
the same.
You sure?
I'm
So
sure.
so uh so would you say that seeing a mountain go from here to there or move, okay? Sometimes earthquakes move mountains in our world. So would you say moving a mountain is the most amazing and unlikely thing you could ever see? Is that what you would say?
No,
It's pretty amazing.
it
Is that the
is.
most amazing thing that could possibly happen in reality?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, is there anything beyond nothing being impossible? What's the next level after nothing is impossible?
Mm,
What's beyond that? We got a person that nothing is impossible for them. Then what's the next level? Where do they graduate from there in their faith?
mm, I don't know.
Do you feel there's another level beyond nothing being impossible? Is that
No, because
something?
if nothing is impossible, then you're able to do everything.
Got you. So this is what I'm saying. Why are you choosing the greater statement as being literal, but the lesser statement, moving a mountain, as figurative? That's my question. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to understand how you're thinking.
I just think that moving a mountain, no one would actually want it to move, but we look at things in our lives as mountain things, like huge things.
Well, if you lived near a place where lava came out of a mountain, would you want a mountain to move so it wouldn't burn up your family? Or would you want it to just stay there and pour out lava? Ooh. No answer? Okay. So, oh, you're muted? Okay. I don't know how you became more mute. Okay,
There
go
we
ahead.
go. I would want it to move. I would want it to move.
Okay, so that is a situation you would want a mountain to move. Okay.
Hmm.
So, what I would want you to think about is why I don't disagree with you,
Hmm.
but it seems like you chose the bigger statement. Nothing will be impossible for you, as
Hmm.
literal. But the lesser, which is a mountain moving, and we don't know how far the mountain is moving. There's limits on that. So that seems more finite, a moved mountain versus nothing being impossible. So let's see what some of you all have said in chat. Thank you so much, Kiera. You did a good
Hmm.
job with that. Very good. So, uh, 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 I'd like to hear what Pastor Stacy has to say about why do you think the Lord is being literal, uh, Pastor Stacy? There you go. You're unmuted.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm thinking he's being literal because there was a time where Jesus had one of the disciples walking on water. And that's pretty atmosphere defying. You know,
Yeah.
that's right up there with moving mountains.
If not a little beyond. Yeah, that's true. Some people can't even float. And he got them walking on the water for
Yes.
quite some distance. And then he looked at the storm and started sinking again, which is a powerful passage of scripture. Yeah. Okay. I think that's reasonable. I think that's reasonable in what your frame of reference that he was being literal. Good. Okay. I'd like to hear what Carla means by both. You split the baby down the middle. Why you say both, Carla?
because I agree with Kiera in the sense that some things can seem like mountains and he can move them for us, but he is also parted the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't, if we were to see the Red Sea in our normal human eyes, we'd say we can't get across. But he dealt with it on a different level.
Okay. Good. 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 All right. Okay. Very good. I think that's good. I don't need to resolve that for you, whether you think it's figurative or literal. There are some people that would really say, Pastor James, why don't you tell them it's literal and that's it? I think it's okay to, the point really here in the passage is not whether Jesus is being literal or figurative. The point here is that nothing will be impossible for you. That if you have just faith the size of the grain of a mustard seed, it doesn't take a whole lot of faith, a whole lot of trust in the Lord for the extraordinary to happen. That's the point. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. So I don't have any problem if you're saying that moving a mountain is illustrative or figurative to get to capture their imagination. I have no problem with you saying that, so long as you know that God can move through you to move a mountain, and that it is in the realm of possibility, because He says nothing will be impossible for you. Yes, Pastor Chris.
I was having trouble unmuting. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think that as I was listening to Kiera talk about it and even listening to Pastor Stacy, one of the things I think about for myself is how many times God really has moved mountains and made nothing impossible. But I think the paradox for us oftentimes is that we may not always recognize his movement because it's not happening in our time frame. That we may have prayed about something a while ago, a long time ago, and we were anxiously, laboring before the Lord about it, and we didn't see any change. And then at a time when we're not even thinking about it or expecting it, something happens. And so I just believe that God is moving mountains all the time for us and doing the impossible. But we are so focused on immediacy about everything, and we want things to happen in an instant that we miss the miraculous things happening in our lives every single day. I was in a store the other day shopping, and a man who was probably emotionally disabled came in, an older gentleman, and the store clerk asked the man, "How are you doing today, Joe?" And he said, "I woke up." And I started to worship in the aisle because I could hear what the man was saying. And the clerk was like, didn't quite get what he was saying, but the man was trying to say that God woke me up again. I'm alive. And that's a miracle, because we don't know the circumstances of what Joe may have been facing. And I think that's exactly what we do sometimes. We are missing the major miracles that God is doing, that we really take for granted, having breath, until you have asthma really bad, or COPD or something. But that there are literal miracles that God is doing every day, moving mountains that we have no idea that he's moving. So I definitely think that what Jesus is saying is literal. Like Pastor Stacey was saying, he had people walking on water. And I really believe that this world has made us a kind of what am I trying to say? It we're so immediacy about things, that we just want everything to happen in the now and to happen the way we think it should happen. That I really believe there are just times where we miss God's mountain moving things in our lives.
Praise the Lord. I can add nothing of value to what Pastor Chris just said, where the point is that God literally can move through us to move a mountain from here to there. And he literally can, and I find it interesting, Jesus is being very empowering, that nothing will be impossible for you. I think there's a sense in which Jesus is releasing us into our own faith and our trust in the Lord. He is not necessarily linking himself that he has to show up. I think he's empowering them, because he says, how long am I going to be with you? How long am I going to put up with you? You're unbelieving. By the way, the word for perverse means crooked. Y'all still crooked. You're still not straight. I've tried to straighten you out. You're still crooked. You're still unbelieving. You still don't trust the Lord. So I don't think there's much to be added to what Pastor Chris said, which is that there are mountains that are being moved all the time. God is constantly active on our behalf. And his birthright to us is that nothing will be impossible for us. That he wants us to live expectantly for his move and to trust him and to experience deeper faith and trust in him based on our deficiencies. And that's where it began. It began with them being unable to cast the demon out and to heal this boy of whatever neurological problem he had that this demon was capitalizing upon. And in the face of that, Jesus came in and remedied the situation. But Jesus raises the ante a bit and says, nothing will be impossible for you. We already know nothing's impossible for me. But my whole reason for being here and empowering you, my whole reason, as Pastor Stacy said, for allowing you to walk on the water or to feed 5,000 men, not including women and children, and to feed the 4,000. My whole reason for that is that nothing will be impossible for you in the growth of the gospel and in the message of the gospel and in the coming of the kingdom. That's what he's giving us, that nothing will be impossible for us. And can we trust that? And can we pay attention to the little things that God is doing, maybe that are not so little in their implications every day? What a word. So thank you. Pastor Chris ended very well. I got a closing reflection question for you for next week. And that is this. Can you recall when you experienced a crisis of faith? This is really nitty-gritty question. And you doubted God's goodness. Can you recall when you experienced a crisis of faith and you doubted God's goodness? I want to know what happened and what you learned about yourself and God. By the way, it's okay. It's okay. I feel like I got to say this. It's okay if you having that crisis of faith right now and you doubting God's goodness right now. What better place to unpack it? I promise you we're not going to shame you. One of the reasons why we can't shame you is that every single one of us has experienced a crisis of faith wherein we doubted God's goodness. Let's face it, or at least is concerned. Clearly, God ain't concerned about this. We've been disappointed with God somewhere along the way if we've walked with the Lord. So I think that authenticity is important. You know, if we're not going to be authentic in Bible class to talk about where our struggles are and give the gift of our need, we place a limit on how God can move in this setting. So what happened and what did you learn, or what are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about God in the midst of even doubting God's goodness? I want you to go deep and talk about doubt next week. And yes, deeper faith is discovered in doubt. That's where I'm going. Next week, we're going to talk about doubt. And we're going to really look at it from a three-dimensional perspective. And I ain't going to, I'm not planning to rebuke anybody about doubt. Doubt is universal. And you can't tell me that you trust the Lord and you ain't never doubted. I don't want to hear it. Because the disciples doubted. That's why they were hiding in apartments and hiding in rooms. They didn't know what was going to happen next after the crucifixion. And they doubted that Jesus was risen. Even though Jesus said, don't tell anybody as we come down this mountain until I'm risen from the dead. Did you read that in the text? He told his best, Peter, James, and John, and Peter, the main person, saying that Jesus ain't rose from the dead. So doubt is real. It's human. Okay? We're going to talk about that next week. And it'd be helpful in the beginning to talk about places where we had a crisis of faith. And so, yes, that'll be really good for next week. Okay. All right. I don't know what you mean, Michelle, by may you respond by email. Oh, I see what you're saying. Can you email it to us? Surely you could. Surely you can. You can email your response to CareView Media or to me. Okay, either one. Yes, I'd be happy to share what you put down, as the Honorable Michelle has to go be honorable next Wednesday. So that is perfectly fine. And we would love to look at and examine what you write as we will look among ourselves. That was great. Thank you so much for everything that you have contributed. Are there any questions anybody has? Any questions? Any questions anybody has? You can raise your hand if you have a question before we leave tonight. Okay. No questions?